Good evening, members of council and viewing audience who've joined us on YouTube. We'll call the meeting to order. And before we call the meeting to order, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the ground, or we acknowledge that the ground on which we live is the traditional territory of the Codwell First Nation of the Three Fires Confederacy and the original people of Point Pelee and Pelee Island and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot peoples. Recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island and who have embraced the stewardship since time immemorial. We would also like to acknowledge the contributions of other nearby First Nation communities and all original people across Turtle Island. We'll have a moment of silent reflection and then we'll stand for playing of our national anthem. Members of council, any disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none, that'll be noted in the meeting and the minutes. Adoption of the minutes of the closed meeting of council held November 9th, 2021, and the minutes of the regular council meeting held November 23rd, 2021 be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Dicho Spagnolo and Councillor Renewal, all in favor. That carries. Thank you. I should acknowledge that Councillor Malash is away on vacation and cannot join us this evening. Mayor's comments. The Goodfellows annual newspaper drive raised $27,900 this year. Thank you to our generous and giving community for donating to this local charity. And thank you to our firefighters and community volunteers who collected donations to ensure a happy holiday for those in need. Christmas boxes are being delivered this week to our local residents. We have had a great turnout and many positive comments about the holiday light display at the Lasalle Civic Center. This Friday to Sunday is the last weekend of events, and lights will be on each day from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. until January 9th. Visit our website for more information. The town of Lasalle will host the 2022 budget session tomorrow and Thursday starting at 9:30 a.m. Join in the session on town's YouTube channel. This is our last regular council meeting of the year, and we will give our good wishes at the end of tonight's meeting. Thank you. We have an announcement from Mr. Militia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment to recognize some of our retirees. We do have a list, and we'll try to share a screen here. Obviously, under COVID conditions, we've not been able to formally recognize folks that have retired in 2020 and 2021. We've done our best to acknowledge them at at our council meetings as they have occurred, but I just thought it would be nice if we could recognize the 2020 retirees. Mr. Dave Malash, who was a leader in our Public Works Department, had 28 years of service with us. He retired in March of 2020. Ms. Diane Hansen was a supervisor of accounting in our finance area and retired in June of 2020 with 31 years of service. Ms. Tina Walters was a facility operator in our Culture and Rec Department, retired in October of 2020 with 33 years of service. And Mr. Dave Grondin was a park seasonal employee in our Public Works area, retired in November of 2020 with 12 years of service. In 2021, early in the year, in effective March 2021, Mr. Dave Sutton, our fire chief and chief community emergency management coordinator, retired after 35 years of service. Brad O'Neill, who was a heavy equipment operator in our Public Works area, retired in March as well, with 16 years of service. We suffered the loss of our Director of Council Services and Clerk in April of 2020 after 6 years of service. Dan Hannon, our Parks Department employee within our Public Works Department, retired in May of 2021 with 21 years of service. And Ms. Joanne Wolanski, who was a clerk in our Public Works Department, retired in May of 2021 with 32 years of service. That brings us to the 2020 and 2021 retirees. We do have two other retirees that are retiring effective the end of the year. And that is Mr. Larry Solani, who is our Director of Development and Strategic Initiatives, as well as Mr. Kevin Miller, who is our former CIO and current Director of Special Projects. Certainly, these two last individuals, just maybe to spend a few minutes on their recognizing their retirement. Mr. Solani joined us in April of 1999. He formerly was with the province and with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, and then spent some time at the county, as well as years in private practice before joining the town of Lasalle as the Director of Planning. Since that time, he has been with us and has taken successively more responsible roles with his current role of Director of Development and Strategic Initiatives. Certainly, his successes with the community are unmatched, and we certainly wish him well in his future endeavors. Mr. Kevin Miller, who originally started his career in Sarnia Township, and we will miss the quote of, "When I was in Sarnia, this is how we used to do it," but we will miss that part of it. He came to us in November of 1988 and as the planning coordinator. From there on, he moved on to the planning director, and then moved on to the Director of Council Services and Town Clerk, eventually becoming the CAO, taking a leave from that position and becoming the Director of Special Projects a few years ago. So between the two of these individuals, they have almost 60 years of experience, and certainly had a strong hand in shaping the community of Lasalle and many of the successes we've had over the years. Again, this would be I'd like to extend my thanks on behalf of administration as well as the community in terms of the leadership that they have shown to the organization and the community. They've always put LaSalle at the forefront and kept us there, kept us on the leading edge of many of the initiatives as we've gone forward. Perhaps a special thanks to their families as they spent countless hours in countless meetings over the years, after hours, and meeting with residents and developers throughout the year. So we do thank them for their understanding and allowing them to participate in their career endeavors with the town. Lastly, just wanted to wish them their best wishes for their retirement. I know that they're looking at some new challenges as they open a different chapter of their lives, but on a personal note, thank you for all the years of mentorship and guidance over the years. They will go unmatched. So thank you. And Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to thank all the retirees for all their years of service that they have provided. Thankfully, we have a long tradition that employees stay with us for long periods of time, spend a lot of time with us, and become part of our LaSalle family as part of Team LaSalle here. So thank you for allowing me this indulgence.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. I know all of those who have retired. Some were personal friends, and they were a great part of Team Lasalle for many years. So we have a presentation tonight from the Regional Food and Organics Waste Management Project. We have Michelle Bishop, Stefan Brisebois, Tom Marintet, Kathy Copot Nepsy, and Sandra Zwire. Sorry, Kathy, I've messed that up. So welcome, Team Michelle, I guess.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi and members of council for allowing us to be here tonight. We're here this evening to provide information regarding the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority's Food and Organics Waste Management Project. We do have a fairly lengthy PowerPoint presentation, and I just wanted to let you know that we won't be going through, each individual slide, but at the end of the presentation, we'd be more than happy to answer questions that pertain to any of the slides. Myself and the USWA management team, I think everyone's on. We had a little bit of technical difficulties on our end, and I thank your IT department and Dale for helping us out. So I think we're all on, and as well, we have Sandra Zwire, the Director of Financial Services from the County of Essex, and she's also available to answer questions as it relates to the county's involvement in the project. So this is our 7th presentation. So you're the 7th county municipality that we've presented to. And we've tried to include as much information as possible in the presentation, but we would be happy to follow up with your administration if there's any questions that can't be answered this evening. So if I could be allowed to share my screen. Thank you. I'm assuming someone will yell at me if they can't see my screen, so I'll start from here.
Michelle, could you make it larger by any chance?
I've got it on full screen on my end.
Okay, no problem.
Does that work? I'm going to speak to most of it, so hopefully there won't be a lot of reading required, Mayor Bondi. So why is this project being undertaken by the authority? That's because legislation has been introduced by the province that requires some municipalities in Essex Windsor to achieve specific diversion targets by 2025. Those diversion targets are defined in the Organics Provincial Policy Statement, or what we refer to as the OPS. And these targets are based on population or population density figures from the 2016 census. So the City of Windsor, based on the census figures, must provide curbside collection and achieve a target diversion rate of 70%. And that's because their population is greater than 50,000 people and their population density is greater than 300 people per square kilometer. For Amherstburg, Lasalle, Leamington, and Tecumseh, they must provide collection, but it can be through a drop-off depot, a community composting area, or through curbside collection, and achieve a target rate reduction of 50%. And that's because their population is greater than 20,000 people and their population density is greater than 100 people per square kilometer. And although Essex, Kingsville, and Lakeshore have a population greater than 20,000 people, their population density was less than 100 people per square kilometer in 2016. When we talk about food and organic waste, what are we talking about? So we're talking about your kitchen scraps, as well as soiled paper products, including coffee filters, Kleenexes, paper towels, and napkins. Food and organic waste can also consist of pet waste, personal hygiene products, and sanitary waste such as diapers. But these are not mandatory in the program and does not necessarily have to be included as feedstock. We currently already capture a certain amount of food and organic waste, and that's the organic waste through your seasonal outdoor waste, your leaf and yard waste, and your flowers and houseplants. And additionally, currently already in your Red Box program, we take compostable products, packaging, such as shredded paper and other paper products. But even with the food and the leaf and yard waste already being collected, as well as the fiber materials, it's still estimated that approximately 35,000 tons of residential food and organic waste was sent to the regional landfill disposal for disposal in 2020 alone. So when we talk about what to do with SSO, which is source separated organics, or kitchen waste, when those are some of the terminology that's used. What technologies can you use to process them without putting them in the landfill? So there's composting, which is very similar to the leaf and yard waste program that we currently have at the regional landfill. There's other programs such as anaerobic digestion, where the material is captured in an enclosed vessel where it's in absence of air. And this process also generates biogases and digestates. There are other emerging technologies, such as bio-drying technologies, where the material is heated and additionally compost is created, and at the same time energy is created. And there is also synthetic gas conversion processes that convert the waste to electricity. All of these processes come with an issue that's an issue with any sort of waste management. And odor is a significant issue in any of the process. And odor is generated particularly in composting facilities and as well in any other process such as anaerobic digestion and other processes that we're looking at. So the authority is exploring odor prevention methods and looking at all of the processes and determining which odor mitigation measures could be considered. So last fall, the USWA board approved the development of a regional food and organic waste management plan and approved the hiring of the consulting firm GHD. Between December 2020 and May 2021, the consultant, as well as an oversight committee and working group comprising of City of Windsor staff, County of Essex staff, and Essex-Windsor Solid Waste Authority staff, worked closely with the consultant to complete a regional food and organic waste management plan and provided the board with regular project updates. We attended regional CAOs meetings and held meetings with stakeholders, including interactive workshops that was attended by representatives from each municipality, as well as had discussions with neighboring municipalities such as London, Chatham-Kent, Sarnia-Lambton. In June, the USWA board reviewed the recommendations and the findings of the plan and directed the Solid Waste Authority Administration to conduct a third-party review of the GHD report. On September 15th and October 5th, the findings of the peer review done by Tetra Tech was reviewed by the board. At that October 5th meeting, Tetra Tech strongly recommended we explore a regional solution. Additionally, at that October 5th meeting, the USWA board approved the recommendation for administration to appear before all 8 municipal councils, which is why we are here tonight. During the process, there was also consultation with the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks with regards to potential changes that may be forthcoming to the ops. We discussed a potential ban on organic disposal at landfills and the tentative date being considered of 2030. And we also discussed what non-compliance with the 2025 deadline would look like. The committee looked at the footprint required for the various technologies. I hit the button, I apologize. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. So we looked at the footprint that's required for the various technologies and considered what the footprint would be required if we looked at a composting facility or a service contract versus an anaerobic digestion facility, and how any synergies potentially exist, such as the regional landfill, combining the methane that's currently being flared at the regional landfill with any process such as an anaerobic digestion facility that could also be combined to create renewable natural gas to be sold to offset the cost of the facility. Similarly, we looked at the Windsor Biosolids Processing Facility, where sludge material could be combined with the organic material. We also looked at the potential locations and identified that some locations would be dependent on which municipalities were participating, at the onset. So for example, the Solid Waste Authority currently looks to consolidate material. So material that's delivered, your waste material that's delivered from the City of Windsor and Tecumseh, that gets consolidated into large transfer trailers, and that gets delivered to the regional landfill to avoid unnecessary traffic up and down the highway. Additionally, material from Kingsville and Leamington gets consolidated at the Kingsville transfer station and delivered to the landfill for disposal. So the committee reviewed the potential of certain municipalities participating at the onset and what that potentially could look like. So example being, if it was only a City of Windsor initiative with potentially Lasalle and Tecumseh participating, the site would likely be set in the City of Windsor to avoid unnecessary transfer traffic. Where if the regional solution was reviewed and it was decided that a regional solution was best, potentially a solution at the regional landfill where all waste is currently consolidated would make more sense. Other considerations that the committee looked at was the timeline for creating or building a processing facility, and looked at how projects could be combined or consolidated, such as the regional landfill. We looked at the opportunity to create jobs, as well as bring in outside fees, such as tipping fees from the industrial, commercial, institutional sector that would offset the tipping fees to the municipalities. And we also looked at potential for generating renewable natural gas and how any project could potentially align with regional goals for energy goals. So this slide is what has been referred to as many of the board members as the chicken or the egg situation. So municipalities don't want to commit without knowing the cost, but we won't know the cost until we know who's participating. Additionally, GHD had identified 13 potential alternatives, and their scope of work did not include estimating cost per municipality for a regional solution. The peer review, including asking Tetra Tech to estimate costs on 3 of the 13 alternatives, and looked at it as a regional solution, including curbside collection, capital expenditures amortized over 20 years, and annual operating expenditures, and then potentially the offsetting revenues from the sale of any renewable natural gas. So you'll see in the table that's provided, composting at the regional landfill is clearly the most inexpensive process, with anaerobic digestion at the landfill and anaerobic digestion at the biosolids treatment facility being the second and third. So while the column in the center, as well as the column on the right for anaerobic digestion is the same process, the significant difference there would be the opportunity to generate revenue through the combination of the landfill methane gas to be sold back to the grid. Additionally, Tetra Tech was asked to review the authority's 15-year forecast and estimate the cost of anaerobic digestion at the landfill, assuming a regional solution. So the table in front of you includes the existing 15-year forecast of the authority, plus any new operating and capital costs, as well as collection costs. So you'll see that an estimate for 2025 is an estimated increase of approximately $7.5 million. Other information that the group considered was that the population and population density figures that were identified as the level of participation for each of the municipalities was based on the 2016 census, and consideration would need to be given for each of the municipalities with regards to when they may exceed the requirements. So a municipality that may be at 85 to 90 people per square kilometer, when would they perhaps fall into the category of being over 100 people per square kilometer and be required to participate? The other information that must be considered is the Ontario's Environment Plan that includes the development of a proposal food ban waste from the regional landfill, which would mean that all municipalities would be required to participate because their traditional food waste that was included in their garbage could not be delivered to the landfill for disposal. The group examined how any diversion activities that result in the redirection of waste from the regional landfill would not generate a savings to the municipalities. So any diversion program would be an additional cost. The regional solution from the onset would ensure consistent public education for all residents, and that targets would not likely be achieved through depot collection. So although curbside collection may not be mandated, success rates are much higher if programs are as convenient as possible. Additionally, the success rates that are for source separated organics can be influenced by the structure of traditional garbage programs, such as conversion to biweekly garbage and weekly organics collection, which is considered best practice. And this would also be a potential savings to municipalities. And the group also looked at organics legislations as well as energy plan targets. So all of the information that has been very briefly summarized in the previous 22 slides led the Oversight Committee to present the following recommendations to the USWA Board. On October 5th, the USWA Board approved the receipt of the recommendations and referred the recommendations to Essex County Council for direction. In particular, the item to be referred to Essex County Council is item 3, that the Council of the County of Essex be requested to initiate and lead organics collection and processing on a regional basis. This had previously stated that the committee was looking for each municipal council to report back if they wanted to participate on an individual basis and what level of participation they were interested in. On October 5th, County Council approved the following: that the Essex County Council consider a regional approach to the food and organics waste management project as it relates to participation from municipalities and report its decision back to the Essex-Windsor Solid Waste Authority no later than December 31st. So items for council to consider regarding the fact that you may not be required to participate at the onset or may not be required to provide full collection at the onset. So some of the items for the council to consider. So consistent service levels throughout Essex-Windsor so that neighboring municipalities don't have organics on one side of the street and not on the other. A regional collection system could be established, similar to the Blue Box program, where one contract could be issued, which will in turn lower collection costs and additionally provide customer service throughout the region that would be consistent. Regional promotion education programs can be simplified to provide the same service throughout the entire region. And higher waste committed at the onset will result in lower per ton costs. So example, if there is a service contract with a service provider, the higher amount of tons that could be committed at the onset would result in a lower cost per ton. Additionally, it was identified that higher costs to enter the there may be higher costs to enter the program at a later date. And it's not the intent to charge municipalities more if they start the program later, but it does go back to the initial infrastructure and startup requirements. So for example, if a municipality such as Kingsville and Leamington did not want to participate at the onset and therefore no transfer station was included in the initial site development, then at a later date, if they wanted to come in to participate and all the material needed to be transferred, the cost for a transfer station would have to be considered. And the final is that a regional solution would likely yield higher diversion and the ability for the municipalities to reach those targets that are set forth in the ops. So due to convenience, so questions for municipalities that may not have to participate at the onset is, are you interested in participating? And then for municipalities such as yourself, if you do not want to provide curbside collection at the onset, do you want to operate a depot? So some municipalities have had varying experiences with depots due to the large amount of unsolicited material or contamination that may be disposed at the depot from the residents. Depots, it would be a large bin that would likely be set up, so there could be a potential for odor and vermin. And then it's the concept of whether or not your residents will participate. So will residents collect their material and deliver it to the depot? And then finally, that municipalities do need to show that they're achieving their diversion target. So our municipalities that are setting up a depot system? Are they prepared to pivot to perhaps curbside if they're not achieving their diversion targets? So that is the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any and all questions that council may have.
Thank you, Michelle. Councillor Carrick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just going back to, so this is coming, just so I'm clear, right? We're all gonna have to participate in this eventually. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct.
Okay, so if I'm going to 2025, maybe my question is to our administration is, are we building that, if we go with the composting at landfill, which obviously is cheaper if everybody else is joining in, are we building that into the budget between now and then to get to that $364,000 extra? Is that the way I'm reading this right?
Mr. Militia will take that one. Oh, Dale's on. Okay, sorry, Dale. Where's the
Okay. We haven't yet started to build that into the budget, but based on the decision that's made, we will forecast the funding that's required and start building that up so that we have enough funding come 2025.
Okay, so I guess the good thing is we still have, well, 3 to 4 years to start the process, which is too bad considering it hasn't been dropped on us right away if I'm reading this correctly. So, and I don't know that we can avoid anything like this, so I would assume that we would probably want to move on this sooner than later, if that makes sense. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick. Councillor Akpata.
Through your worship, appreciate the presentation to the team and fully support the greening and keeping our planet around longer so I can pass something down to my children. Quick question for you. For restaurants, grocery stores, and things of that nature that are disposing of food waste, how do you anticipate handling that? I know how I can do it in my home from my family's perspective, but I'm looking to some of the restaurants and facilities that are close by that, as you said, if it's a bin, may attract vermin, there might be some infrastructure shifting and changing that they can do. So the sooner that we can let folks know that this is coming, again, not wanting to have a big green bin with all kinds of things like that. Have you seen what other municipalities have done? I'm just looking to some advice so that when I'm asked by our restaurateurs as to what they can expect, how you would suggest or different plans that you've seen in other municipalities.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Excellent question. So right now, the provincial policy statement is only targeting residents and multi-residential sites. So as far as what we refer to as ICI, which is industrial, commercial, institutional facilities, there is not a requirement at this time. But what may come down the road is in 2030, industrial, commercial, institutional customers that currently deliver material to the regional landfill will be required to have a solution because that material won't be allowed at the landfill. So, you know, unfortunately, they have not. There is a significant amount of waste that's generated by that area. However, right now, that's not included in the policy statement, but it may be down the road for sure.
And then I guess just a supplemental, if a entity wanted to participate, is there anything in the legislation that prohibits them from doing that on their own? Or is this strictly a legislative requirement?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair. So there's nothing that stops any entity from participating. And I do believe there are some facilities in the region that are already delivering their waste to a service provider in the area, such as some grocery stores and things of that nature. So they do have some composting or anaerobic digestion facilities that they deliver material to.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Those are my questions.
Any other council questions? First time I hear this presentation, Michelle. I'm on the board of USWA in case people don't know, so I'm well aware of what we're dealing with. Okay, if no further question, council's pleasure. Councillor Desjardins.
I would make a motion to receive the report, and thank you very much for the information, Michelle.
I think I saw your hand up, Councillor Dicho Spagnolo, in second. Okay. Can you hear us now, Anita? You can? Okay. But we can't hear you. Okay, thanks. Just making sure we're on the same. I'll keep an eye on you. Okay, on the motion, all in favor? That carries. Thanks, Michelle and Team USWA. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next year, I guess. Have a great Christmas, all of you.
To you as well. Thank you very much for your time, Mayor Bondi and Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, reports. E1, Forest Trail Subdivision Extension Request Phase 3B. Mr. Solani.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. This is a request that's come forward from the Forest Trail subdivision developers. That particular subdivision received draft approval phase 3 in 2015. They've developed most of the lands there as part of that phase of the development. There is one section, phase 3B, 22 lots in total, that is still draft approved and has not yet been serviced and developed at this stage. It requires an existing drain to be relocated and widened, and that is something that is outside of the control of the developer at this time. So it is at this point in time appropriate to be receiving this request, because they're looking at that draft approval will lapse or expire in April of 2022 unless an extension is granted. So engineering and planning staff have reviewed this, and as you see in the report, we are supporting the request for this extension to April of 2025. And if council concurs, a copy of that resolution would be sent to the manager of planning at the county, who requires that in order to grant an extension to that draft approval. And I'm available if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Solani. Council's, any questions? Basically straightforward. They have to move the drain and we have to wait for a report. We grant them the extension so they can do it at a further time.
Correct.
Moved by Councillor Renno. Support by Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? That carries. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Solani. We have the request to increase height of Malden Square pylon sign. Mr. Burgess.
Yes, good evening, Your Worship and members of council. The report before you this evening is to permit an increase in the height of the existing pylon sign at Malden Square. The height increase is minor in nature, and we are in support of the increase in the height. I'm available for questions.
Council, moved by Councillor Renno, or do you have a question? Question, okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Alan, I'm just curious, when I was reading through the report that we actually updated this bylaw a little while ago and we had downsized the height. Was there a reason for that? Is that a best practice? Is that an engineering thing? I'm just curious as to why we downgraded it.
I'm not aware of the reason for the decrease in the height. I was not part of the, or was not responsible for the bylaw at that time.
Thank you.
Any other council questions? Council's pleasure. Moved by Councillor Renno. Support by Councillor Carrick. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Drainage Superintendent appointment. Council received the report and adopt bylaw appointing Michael Capucci as the Drainage Superintendent. Mr. Osborne.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. Not too much to add here, a bit of a housekeeping item, but now that Michael Capucci is on board, we can appoint him as the Drainage Superintendent through the Drainage Act by way of bylaw. So I'm available for any questions. Thanks.
Any questions? Moved by Councillor Edicio Spagnolo. Support Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Insurance renewal. Mr. Langlois.
Your Worship, members of council. Before you is the report on the insurance renewal. It has significantly increased. We're looking at a just over 13% increase. Believe it or not, that's actually, I think, probably the lowest in the region. there's some municipalities that are experiencing a 30% rate increase. So we did do some research with our broker there and looked at some different options. We have proposed switching cyber insurance providers. In previous years, we had insurance for $5 million. There's no longer any companies that are offering $5 million insurance. The maximum is the $2 million. And their price nearly doubled with reducing their the amount that they've provided by 60%. So we looked at different options and in switching to our cyber insurance provider to CFC, that price is almost cut in half. So if we factor that in, we go from a 17.8% increase just to over 13%. We also looked at what if we increased our deductibles. So if we increase those by 25,000, we'll save on our liability insurance, 9,400 annually. So given those figures, it probably doesn't make sense to increase our deductibles. So we're recommending that we keep those the same and move forward with the proposed recommendation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dale. Any questions? Councillor Akpata.
Through your worship, Dale, I just wanted to understand, does this mean that all municipal endpoints, regardless of whether they're police, fire, or the municipality, are now covered?
Pardon me? Can you repeat
all
the
of the endpoints re-cyber. So whether it is the municipality, the town of Lasalle, the Lasalle Police, Lasalle Fire, all of our endpoints will be covered.
That's correct. Sorry. Yeah.
That's it, your worship.
Yeah, it stays exactly consistent with what we were provided last year.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Longo, if we ever get rid of joint and several liability, you can see the biggest part of our premium is liability. And I can tell you, even in personal, it's going up. It's ridiculous, but the powers that be won't change the law, so we have to deal with it and we end up paying. Any other council questions? Council's pleasure. Moved by Councillor Dicho Spagnolo, support Councillor Carrick. All in favor? That carries. Thank you, Mr. Longwa. You're still here. Proposed drainage billing and collection policy.
Thank you. So a couple of years ago, we moved away from the Sandwich West Act to the Drainage Act. Since then, we've been doing quite a bit of work on various drains throughout the town. And in speaking with Mr. Osborne, we expect our first billings at some point in 2022. So as such, we've created this here drainage billing and collection policy. We've done our research, spoke with many of the other municipalities and the various challenges that they face and whatnot. And we've developed our policy. Just a note, as part of our policy, if there's individual bills that are less than $50 or total works for a project that are under $2,500, we'll fund those internally through the drainage reserve. Other than that, the policy outlines the different options for the residents to pay their bills. And the bills are based on water flow and various different factors in an engineering report. So not every property owner will be charged the same. It varies depending on property size and the flow of stormwater. But I'd be happy to answer any questions if there is any.
What's your response going to be when people say, I don't want to pay it?
Too bad.
It's one of those things, we have to do it. Councillor Renno.
I wanted to thank Dale for the report. I think it's well thought out, and I think it's reasonable, with all the payment options. So thank you. I will support the motion.
Moved by Councillor Renno, support Councillor Dicho Spagnolo. All in favor? That carries. Thank you, Mr. Longwa. And now we have our changes to the Parks, Recreation, and Events Committee meeting schedule. Ms. Finaro.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. The purpose of this report is to propose a change in the regular meeting schedule of the Parks, Recreation, and Events Committee from monthly to quarterly. Changing to this schedule will keep us in line with how the planning in recreation parks and events is done quarterly or sessionally, and will allow for less duplication and more detailed reporting. It should be noted that we still could have additional meetings at the call of the chair, should they be needed, and furthermore, information could be provided through emails if updates are necessary. If this report is approved, it would also be approving updating the terms of reference to reflect these changes. That concludes my report. I'm available should there be any questions.
Council questions. Councillor Akpata.
Your worship, just to speak in support of what Ms. Fernaro brought up as the chair of the committee, one of the things that Ms. Fernaro is looking at doing in her team is streamlining and making the administrative component in support of Parks and Rec more efficient. As Ms. Fernaro has pointed out, there may be some times where there are overlaps in meetings. There may be some times where there are extra meetings that are called because of the dates of what we're doing. So she's thoughtfully put together a plan that will make the administrative component of this committee more efficient and more effective. And I note to you, your worship, that as Ms. Fernaro said, should something unique arise, we can always have a meeting at the call of the chair. But her thought is to streamline the process, make it more efficient, and allow council, the public, and other members of administration to concentrate specifically on the task at hand and to make sure that information is put out in a timely manner.
Thank you, Councillor Akpata. Council's pleasure. Moved by Councillor Desjardins, support by Councillor Akpata. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fernaro. 6th concession drain infill, engineer appointment. Mr. Osborne.
Thank you, your worship and members of council. We've received a request from a homeowner at 7340 Disputed. They'd like to fill in their piece of ditch in front of their house, which is the piece of the 6th concession drain. So to do this, we need to go through the Drainage Act, and the first step of that would be to appoint an engineer, and we're recommending R.C. Spencer to be appointed by council tonight.
Thank you, Jonathan. Council questions? Councillor Desjardins. You're still muted, Councillor Desjardins.
Sorry. Thank you. Through you to Jonathan. Let's try this again. Seeing where this house is, and I kind of took a drive by, in a situation like this, does this usually lead the neighbors to do something as well, that we might be looking at filling in the whole area?
What it does, it will provide notification to the neighbors, mainly the upstream neighbors. And then if at that time that's something they want to look at, they can kind of jump on and make those requests as well. But through it will kind of just piggyback on this request, and those requests can come in once we start to open it up to that drainage community.
Okay, thank you. So I would support the motion then.
Okay, moved by Councillor Desjardins, support by Councillor Riccio Spagnolo. All in favor? That carries. Thank you, Jonathan. Alternating parking implementation proposals. Mr. Beggs.
Good evening, members of council. The report that I've got tonight deals with a request that came from council to review some options for alternating parking to be implemented. So just a little bit of background on what we currently do. Basically, right now we have two ways of installing alternating parking. One is a request will come in from a resident, and we will review the area to see if it's suitable for alternating parking. And at that time, the bylaw would come to council for an update and approval. And typically we move forward with installing the signage. Each year we get probably maybe 4 to 5 requests, and it's a relatively minor part of our year. The other way that they're installed is when a new development is built, that we will install the alternating parking right away so that it's installed when the houses start to be built. Now, as we know, with our current situation, we do have people that come in to speak for and against the signage from time to time, and we deal with those as they come in. So what we did for this report is a survey of the whole town and determined what would be needed to install alternating parking throughout the town where it's not currently already installed. And we came up with about 5,600 signs would need to be installed. And we came up with a total budget of just around $900,000 for the project. In the report, and I'll just share my screen here. So as you can see on the map, we divided the town up into 5 different areas so that in each of the 5 years, we would go and basically install the signage in one of the areas. So after we got kind of the numbers and started looking at this, we started to realize that in each of these areas, we're going to need to send out notification that the signage would be installed for that year. And we started to consider that there would likely be a lot of residents that would wish to speak for and against the signage that may be going up on their road. And the thought process with administration was that there would likely be a lot more action and requests to come before council to speak to this because they are quite large areas. So we started looking at a second option to see what other ideas there might be. So in the report, what I've put together is the option for installing all the signs is there. But after kind of going through the exercise and realizing that this really could open up a lot of people coming into council, we thought it might make more sense to continue with a system that's similar to what we're doing now. And basically, the recommendation is that we do keep doing what we have been doing so that people would still request. But I would come back with a follow-up report early in 2022 with a little bit more of a plan of how we would deal with the requests coming in, and then the request would still come to council, but it would be a system similar to our traffic calming policy where letters would be sent out to the residents of the area where the request is coming from, and then we would review it and make sure that there is buy-in from the neighborhood before we proceed with installing any signage. So with that, I'm available for any questions. The recommendation is to continue with the system that we have been doing, and that a follow-up report come in early 2022 with some additional procedure for this process.
Thank you, Mr. Beggs. Council questions? Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. Through you. Not actually a question, it's a comment. Mark, I like the idea of going forward with option 2. It makes a lot more sense to me that as we're putting in new subdivisions, people will be aware of the fact that the parking will be alternating. They've got that from the get-go, and then we can deal with the other individual requests on an as-need basis as we do now. I think it's a good report. I like the timeframes that you set out if we went with option number 1, but I really don't like the money to go with option number 1. So I would like to stay with number 2. So I would make that motion to approve the recommendation.
Okay, the recommendation is moved by Councillor Desjardins. Support? No. Councillor Renno.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Beggs, I just want to confirm, if I was to support this motion, that basically nothing is changing at this point. We are going with alternating parking in the new subdivisions, but we are not making a commitment to putting any alternating parking at this time anywhere else in the town. That will be on an as requested basis like it is now. Is that correct?
Yes, Councillor Renaud, that is correct. So what the recommendation is to keep doing what we have been doing with our current system, which is as the requests come in, we deal with them as they come in. Those would still come to council. We would continue installing the alternating parking in new developments as we have been as well. And also I would come back with a further report to enhance what we are currently doing with as a procedurally, but it wouldn't be to implement the any signs like town-wide. So you are correct with your comment.
Thank you. I'll support the motion.
Okay, we have a mover, Councillor Desjardins, support Councillor Renno. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Carrick, did you have a question?
Yeah, some comments.
Okay.
So I'm okay with moving forward with option 2 as a result of Mark had just said that we're going to review as we move forward, because at the end of it all, this came forward as a result of making sure that emergency equipment can get down the road. So if they're parking on both sides, that's very difficult for us. Snow plows, fire, police, I think even Councillor Acapata brought that up a number of times. So I just want to make sure that that's going to come forward quicker as opposed to later, because I don't mind doing new subdivisions, but we still have to address the older subdivisions. So that's the concern I have, but I will support option 2 to move forward at this time. Thanks.
Okay, on the motion, all in favor? That carries. Thank you, Mr. Beggs. Item 9, engagement of Miller Laney Inc. Mr. Militia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report before council, again, it's dovetailing on some of the comments earlier in the meeting. As council is aware, Mr. Miller and Mr. Solani will be retiring at the end of the year, and unfortunately leaving our organization with a vast degree of experience. And so they've created a partnership in which they will offer consulting services, and there are a number of projects that we would like to engage them on. 2 of them are outlined in the report: the Culture and Rec Consolidated Master Plan, as well as the Community Improvement Plan for the Waterfront Front Road District. Obviously, these 2 individuals have a vast amount of experience. Again, we feel that they know the community best in terms of providing that experience and that outcome in the report. We have outlined in the report that this does meet our procurement policy. We did again verify that with our Director of Finance with respect to if this was allowable. So it is allowable under the procurement bylaw. And so it is before council. Should you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. Council questions. Councillor Renno.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple, just in regards to procurement policy. First of all, I'm a little, I guess I'm a bit confused, just because in the past, we get our budget like we're going to be working through tomorrow, and in there'll be a request possibly for a capital expenditure to do a master plan, for example, and we approve that, and then in the next year we put a tender out, we get a company to come in and do that, and it's all part of a process. And it just seems like in this case we're going past that process. If you could just explain to me why things are changing in this case, and we're not going to go out for proposals. We're not going to do things kind of the way we've been successful in the past.
Certainly, Councillor. So again, we have used a variety of methods in retaining consultants over the years. Some have been through direct assignment, as we're suggesting this be. Some are through a competitive request for quote process, and some are through the request for proposal process. So we've used a variety of mechanisms to engage consultants. Again, in certain cases, we have done direct assignments because it just makes the most sense for us. Most times it's about doing it better, faster, quicker. And that is the primary driver of how we decide how we, or the method in which we denote assignments. In this case, again, we have a variety of, again, I'll speak to the two items in particular. The Culture and Rec Master Plan, we have a variety of parks master plans that have been done at different times. And unfortunately, there's a variety of, I guess, a varying degree of how much we follow each plan. And so we need a consolidated plan in order to properly denote how we deal with parks in the various neighborhoods and across municipalities, both the current parks and future parks. So that is a glaring weakness in our process at this point in time, and we want to tighten that up. And as such, we look to tighten that up with a consolidated master plan with respects to the park side. Included in that is also looking at the Front Road waterfront project and how that is to develop. In terms of the community improvement plan, again, that's an area where we've always looked to make more investments on Front Road. We are making a significant investment in the waterfront feature, but we do feel that there's an opportunity to then take it to the next level. And this is something we've spoken to council about in the past in terms of looking at a community improvement plan. How can we help businesses improve the area to create a more profitable, more desirable area along Front Road, which will dovetail with our development of the Front Road property at the Petite Côte project. So those are the two areas and the reasoning why we took a look at these engagements. The third is the ad hoc services, and that mainly relates to some of the leftover, if I will, housekeeping work that we have with some of the renovation project that we have at the former Westport Marina site, which is the Lasalle, the new waterfront event center. So in terms of the process that we follow, this process is not that much different than what we followed in the past. There's a few engagements that we followed just recently that we've awarded to the various engineering consulting firms that continue on. And it's really viewed almost as an extension of work. And because they have a lot of invested knowledge in that particular area. One area that I'd point to is the Howard Buford drainage study that is done. There was a lot of pre-work that was done by Dillon Consulting, and we direct assign that work to Dillon to do that work going forward. The same could be said with respect to the Malden Road expansion in that area. So those are, again, we followed a practice here of trying to get the best result possible. We do look at competitive pricing because we understand that is part of the process. We do compare what an hourly rate would be for this engagement with any other. We do compare what the scope of work and what the expectations are. And so that's the process that we follow with respect to this particular assignment and other assignments that we have.
And how would you compare the costs if you're not actually asking for requests or proposals? How do we know that these are current and that there's not hungry consultants out there?
That's a fair comment. Again, and I guess I'll answer that in two phases, in two parts, I should say. The first part is we take a historical knowledge of what we have paid for similar type work in the past and compare that to what the going rates are and see if there is a wide fluctuation. We also compare against what others in the region have paid for similar type of work and see what that is. So we do that a lot with other services as well, whether it's audit, whether it's, we used to do it for legal in some cases. And so we do an engineering as well. And so we do if you'll do an environmental scan of what we have, what our expectation is in terms of what our past experience has been for pricing and what the pricing experience has been for some of our neighbors. I will also say that a project like this and very much would fall into the request for proposal category, in which price is not the primary determinant. For some of the more standardized projects, and I will say, for example, when we do road rehabilitation or we do road reconstruction, again, some of those are more standardized in nature. And will then lead you down the path of a request for tender where price is more or less the primary determinant. A project like this and many projects like this are really based on a combination of experience, price, and timing. And so those are the three sides of things that you'll be able to, that we judge these types of projects on. So a project like this would lead you down the path, should you choose to go through a competitive process, would lead you down the path of a request for proposal perspective, where price is not normally the primary indicator. In fact, in most cases in our request for proposal situations, price really accounts for anywhere from 20 to 40% of the point values. The majority of the point values are based on depth of experience, quality of work, other projects and things of that nature. And that's where, again, that's where we're taking advantage of this new partnership of our two soon to be former employees, in that they do bring a lot of that experience that they bring to the table that is relatively unmatched in what we would see out in the consulting world. No one is going to know our community better than these two individuals. No one's going to know the history of our community than these two individuals. So, we're taking advantage of that. And in some cases, I would suggest to you that if we went to a request for proposal, I would expect these two to get awarded the project, because they do offer that level of expertise that we would need for a project like this. Again, realizing that this project is not one that would be primarily based on a price point. It would be more based on a combined price consideration, but more so on the quality of work and the quality of experience point.
Okay, thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. And I understand the idea of having a matrix for these types of projects. My next question would be, after looking through the budget for next year, I don't see any requests. I see in 2019, I did see in 2020 the Parks Consolidated Plan was proposed, but was not allowed in the capital budget that year. It was not proposed again last year or this year. I'm just wondering where the money for that particular project will come from.
So again, for the master plan review project, the consolidated master plan, that is one that we would pay through a combination of development charges as well as the parks reserve. So those would be the funding mechanisms for that particular project. The community improvement plan will come, has been developed as part of the whole investment in Front Road with respect to the Petite Côte. And so that is the other side of it. We do believe that there's some opportunity to use development charges for that particular project as well. But those would be the funding sources for those two particular projects.
Okay, so my final question then. Again, I didn't see a commitment to the reserves in this year's budget that we're going through tomorrow. So is it in there and I just missed it?
I'd have to check with Mr. Langlois, but I don't believe that you missed it. I'm not sure that if it's included in that. So I see Mr. Langlois on the screen, and perhaps he can answer that question.
Hi. I don't think it's specifically identified as a specific project. It would be combined within other areas of the budget. For example, sometimes we have blanket amounts that we put in there that cover various different projects. So that they're not specifically identified, but they would be grouped in with one of those general areas within the budget. And we do have the reserves available. It would not impact the tax rate. And then sometimes items do pop up, capital items throughout the year that aren't part of the budget, and specific reports like this one are done to address it. If it comes up after the budget has been issued or approved, and typically we explain which reserves we would fund it from and the financial impact.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, if I could add just one other item, I believe that the community improvement plan is part of the strategic the strategic planning projects that are going to be presented to council. So again, it goes back to if you're looking specifically for these two items as a line item within the budget, you will have great difficulty finding them because they are involved in a much larger project that you'll see. And I think some of that will come forward when we talk about the actual strategic planning budgets that you'll see presented over the next couple of days.
Add to that, I'm sorry. Within the new strategic planning department, there is that's absolutely correct. There is the blanket amounts by different category of our strategic plan goals. So they don't identify specific projects. They do have funding for each category. And there is going to be I think in January, there's going to be a detailed presentation with Ms. Hadre that will explain exactly our 5-year plan moving forward and the various different initiatives and how that money will be used to fund those specific initiatives.
Thank you.
Councillor Carrick.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. I guess some comments. It meets the procurement policy, so we're not doing anything illegal, which is important. My fellow colleague, Mr. Renewal, asked a lot of good questions, which is good that they were explained very well. I'm of the mindset that at least for 2022, that we move this recommendation forward. And the reason I'm saying this is because we've been in a good position to get that culture and recreation consolidated master plan taken care of, and also the community improvement plan. We were investing a ton of taxpayers' money down there on the waterfront as well. So what better than to have the expertise and the experience of these two gentlemen to help oversee and move us along. So if there's ever a question, any of us can get immediate answers. We don't have to chase it around. I don't know why we wouldn't take advantage of these two guys. They are as good as it gets, and it protects us as we move forward. And at least for 2022, it gives us an opportunity to make sure it's being done right so that we can oversee it and they can report back to us. And if we don't like it after that, the next council can make that decision. But personally, I think it's an opportunity we can't afford to lose. And with what they bring to the table is priceless, in my opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Akpata.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm speaking against this motion. I have thought long and hard about this one, and I've reflected on some of the changes in my own work life that have happened. And without mentioning any of those companies, transitioning from one technology company to another one, I sat through a presentation on my exit where I was made aware that any of the knowledge that I'd gained when I was working there, I could not come back in a consulting capacity, even though I hadn't done any of that specific work. And a specific term was made aware to me. And I'm just going to suggest that as the CAO had said, these two gentlemen are probably the most knowledgeable people that I've ever met, that I've had the privilege of speaking with. I've accepted their counsel on decisions that I've made, but I believe that our process has to stand beyond and be beyond reproach. I do not believe that we can go forward with this motion without creating some type of conflict of interest, because they are current employees of the municipality. And I can only use myself as the example. And again, to our colleagues on council, I am not a lawyer and I do not purport to be one. I've sat through these types of presentations and been told what I can and cannot do. And I believe that this engagement parallels some of the things that I've been told are not appropriate. So I believe that if we had an open RFP policy and that we were allowed to reach out to entities in the community, and this company provided the best background and presentation and understanding of what we do, that it would be fair to award it to them. But Your Worship, at this point in time, I cannot support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Akpata. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. Through you. I do think that this is a very good proposal, and I know that Kevin and Larry have done some really great work for us in the past. However, reading through some information about what is considered a conflict of interest and ethics, I feel that this is a conflict right now, since the gentlemen still work for the town of Lasalle and they will be going out on their own after their retirement. And I do think it should have been held over after 2021 into 2022, to move forward the beginning of the year. We can work with that community plan for money. We can work with the parks plan for money in January. I just don't feel good about doing this right now, and I will not support it. And I would ask for a recorded vote at the time that we make the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Renno.
Just one final statement. I will not be supporting the motion, but what I will say is that I agree with Mr. Militia. You know, once we see where the money's moving around in the new year, if we were to put out an RFP, I think we will find that these two gentlemen are more than suitable for the job. However, I just don't think this is the way to do it. So I will not support the motion.
I don't think, yes, Councillor Carrick.
I'm just gonna say one thing. I don't believe they are in conflict. It meets the procurement policy, so I will leave it at that.
I don't think Councillor Dicho Spagnolo can speak because we can't hear her. She's having technical difficulties. Where I sit, I don't see a conflict. These people will not be working for the municipality when this starts. They work now. We're staying on top of things. The CAO spoke in relation to it meets our procurement policy. Obviously, our solicitor in-house, Mr. Dudalt, would have his opinion on this, and I believe he's not on this, but it would have been passed through him. So I see no issue with that. We have over 50 years combined experience, and Mr. Militia went through the difference between an RFP and how we award these contracts. I've stated publicly in our meetings, I don't think there's anybody second or anybody ahead of Mr. Solani, not even in Ontario, maybe even Canada. And to let go of this expertise, where's the issue? We're going to get awarded a contract that's in 2022 for work that they're going to do for us. Pure and simple. Mr. Carrick stated, hey, what's the worst case scenario? We hire them in 2022 and they're not as good as they have been for the town for the past 50 years, over 50 years combined experience? No, I don't buy that. And I know there's people out there saying this is wrong, this is wrong. I don't see where the wrong is. We've always been elected to do what's right for the municipality. We're going to spend over 65 million on the waterfront alone. And they've been working on it. We get a consultant, they're going to come in and go, yeah, we'll bid on it, we'll low bid. What do they know about it? Where's the history? Mr. Solani knows this municipality as well as Mr. Miller. You've all discussed with him different projects at different times. And I, for one, have to support this because whoever gets on council next year will be dealing with whatever decisions, good or bad, we make this year. And what better decision than to hire people who have worked for us, who know what they're doing. There's no conflict. What are they getting that they shouldn't be getting? They're getting a contract next year after they retire in, 17 days? I don't see it. None whatsoever. I'm adamant about voting in favor of this. There's a recorded vote that was called for. It will be recorded. Sadly, we don't have Deputy Mayor Meloche on this. So we'll have to deal with what we have in front of us. We have, do we have a mover and a seconder, first of all, before we call a vote? Councillor Carrick, move. Do we have support? No support on the recommendation. Motion is denied. Okay. We go on to updates to the Town LaSalle Emergency Response Plan. That will be, I believe, Chief. There he is. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. The Provincial Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act requires that every municipality develop an emergency response plan, and subsequently that this response plan is periodically reviewed, at least annually. And if such a review results in significant changes, that the response plan be reviewed approved or endorsed by council and approved by bylaw. This year's review of the emergency response plan did result in some changes as identified within my report. And as a result, the report before you is asking for your endorsement of the proposed emergency response plan, and then at the appropriate time within tonight's agenda to be approved by bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I thought you were going to read this whole report.
I wouldn't do that to you.
Thank you. Council's pleasure. Moved by Councilor Reno. Support. Councilor Akpata, all in favor? That carries. Thank you, Chief. Garbage collection renewal. Mr. Langlois.
Sorry, my button was sticking. So we did go out for an RFP on November 4th on our bids and tenders website. We had received a lot of comments from potential bidders that there was not sufficient time provided, and it would take at a minimum many months before, if they were the successful bidder, that they would be able to provide a service for us. So that being said, in order to receive more than one bid and be fair to all bidders, we are looking at a 1-year extension of the existing agreement. And then we'll extend the start date for the successful bidder to January 1st, 2023. That being said, we have received a 1-year extension price for a 1-year extension. It is very significant, a lot more than we have budgeted. Typically, we budget for inflationary increases and for the increase in the number of households in the municipality. Historically, inflation's been 2% per year. After going back with the executives of GFL on why the price increased so significantly, they informed us that their prices over the past 5 years have been, in many years, over 10% per year increase. So that explains the significant increase. We haven't budgeted for this price, so our plan is to budget for the difference to fund through our tax stabilization reserve. We will see what the bids come back at, and then we'll budget appropriately in the 2023 budget for the actual price of garbage collection. So that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions council might have.
Councilor Reno.
Just a comment. Thanks for the work on this, Dale. I mean, I think it's it's disappointing to say the least. I mean, this is probably one of our most revered assets or services, I should say. Everybody loves our garbage collection, and just to know that the price is increasing so much, it's disappointing. However, everything's going up. I mean, you know, we've all seen slides and consumer price indexes and inflation and everything. And this pandemic has done a lot of wild things. And so good work on getting an extension, and let's go into it, you know, feet first next year.
Thank you, Councilor Reno. Council's pleasure. Councilor Desjardins, move. Support Councilor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. It's something we don't like to see an increase. It's like insurance and now the garbage collection, but who else can do it? We have to follow what we're given, I guess. Thank you, Mr. Langlois. Okay, now we have Fire Committee meeting minutes, November 18th, 2021. Councilor Renewal.
Thank you, Your Worship. The meeting was kind of brief. We had some other business to deal with that day, but you know, what should be noted is that we're seeing great results and less need for fire suppression, and there's other issues out in our community that are increasing our call volume. So once again, much like the last time I reported, our call volume was up a little bit this quarter again. I would imagine some of it directed to the pandemic and to the mental state and to things like that. So just be aware that the calls are increasing, but that our team continues to do a great job of staying on top of things.
Thank you, Councilor Reno. Any other questions, comments? Council's pleasure. Moved by Councilor Reno, support Councilor Akpata. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Parks and Rec and Events Committee meeting minutes, November 18th. Councilor Akpata.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you're aware, Ms. Finero did a presentation on harmonizing the meeting schedule. That was most of our discussion. And again, it was brought before council for council's acknowledgement. So the minutes, I believe, stand on their face, Your Worship, and I'm open to any questions from my colleagues.
Council's pleasure. Moved by Councilor Desjardins, support Councilor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Information items to be received. County of Essex correspondence regarding Windsor Essex Community and Safety Wellbeing Plan 2022 to 2026. Council's pleasure. Move to receive Councilor Desjardins. Support. Councilor Akpata, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Windsor Essex Regional Food Policy Council correspondence regarding organic waste management plan. Moved by Councilor Reno. Support. Councilor Desjardins, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Windsor Essex Regional Food Policy Council correspondence regarding organic waste management plan. Sorry. Sorry. I'm reading the one that we already did, but I wanted to read the Town of Essex correspondence regarding letter of instruction from Windsor Essex County Health Unit. That's the addendum item that was added. Councilor Reno.
Motion to receive.
I'll move to receive that.
Support.
Councilor Carrick, thank you. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. October 2021 financial statement and financial reports. Hi, Chantel. Oh, I guess it's Mr. Langlois.
Hey, I'm available for any questions, but I just did want to note that we have kind of a good news story. The Culture and Rec Department, their deficit has actually remained the exact same from the previous month. So that's good news. With us starting to reopen the Volmer, the deficit is no longer continuing to increase into the fall months. So that's a good news story that we're starting to, the hole is not getting bigger within that department as we move forward. But I would be happy to answer any questions council might have.
Council's pleasure. Councilor Reno.
I'll move to receive. Thank you.
Support. Councilor Desjardins. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Town of Lasalle 2020 financial indicator review. Mr. Langlois.
Your worship, members of council, just wanted to provide council with an update here. Every year there is a financial indicator review. The town's required to submit our financial information return. And then basically what the financial indicator review does, it looks at different ratios and compares how we stand to the other municipalities in the province. LaSalle has scored low in every category, which is good. And in almost every category, we score better than the provincial average. So that's a good news story, but I would be happy to answer any questions. The report does outline what each of the different ratios mean, but if there is any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Sorry, Councilor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know what? I just wanted to thank Dale. Thank you very much for the detailed explanation, because I mean, we get so many reports and sometimes we get lost in the details. And I found your explanations to each and every line insightful and helpful. And besides that, congratulations on improvement year over year for 5 years. You can see the improvement in every line, and the fact that we're lower risk on everything should be commended, not only to yourself, but to Tano and to the other financial guy that's on the screen. Thank you, Joe.
Well, thank you, Councillor Reno. I would just say it's because of council's decisions, but all kidding aside, they're doing a great job. We have a great team in finance. Mr. Militia.
I just would like to add one comment. Again, the team here has done a great job of continuing on with a history of success with respect to our financial stability at the town of LaSalle. I would like to just caution council on one item. I know one of the items within the financial indicator report is the total assets to debt ratio. And I know we're at the low, we had been at the at the moderate level a number of years ago, and then we've moved to the low. As we issue more and more debt, that will tend to rise correspondingly. So it really, in our case, it's a function of the fact that we're not a high grant municipality. And as a result, we have to issue more debt than perhaps a comparable debt, what it would have to. And so we just as a word of warning, in the next few years, you can expect that particular indicator to go from low to moderate as we issue more debt. And then as debt comes off the table, it'll go back down to low again. So it's an intentional, by design type of procedure that we have when it comes to that particular indicator.
Councillor Reno.
A supplemental question to you, Joe. In that particular line, obviously the percentage is going to go up as we take more debt. But will there be do you feel that there'll be some kind of provision made, considering that interest rates are so low, to not necessarily change the favorable status that we have, based on the fact that the cost is so much lower? Do you think maybe the threshold will be a bit higher before we get bumped into a moderate category?
So I'll answer that question in two parts, and perhaps Mr. Langlois can add in the parts that I missed, because it's been a little while since I did finance. But I think that from what I understand, those indicators are almost automatic. You hit a certain percentage and it automatically populates the favorable, unfavorable, low, medium, high type category. So I think from that perspective, this particular avenue of the financial indicator may move depending on what the percentage is. But I think what you also are referring to is our ability to issue debt and our annual repayment limit. So we are, I can't tell you how much debt we could issue. Literally, it's hundreds of millions of dollars that we could issue.
Yeah.
I think that, not that we're going to do that. For the viewing audience, we are not intending to do that. But that is what is allowed for under the current calculation set out by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housings for municipalities. So, when you issue that much debt, you also have to repay it, which causes a tax implication. Or tax rate implication. But again, the fact that we have so much debt room is again attributable to the strong financial management that we've had, in that we've not issued debt unless we've really had a large project that we've been unable to fund ourselves through our own internal resources and our internal timing of events. I will also say that I believe that we only have, I want to say, if Mr. Langlois correct me, 3 or 4 debt issuance. We have the Lou Romano, we have the Vollmer, this facility, and now the waterfront debt. So we only have 4 significant debts to speak of. And I believe, I don't know when the due date is on the Vollmer, but that comes off at some point, which will also help some of the ratios. So I'll turn it over to Dale, who has a little bit more specifics with respect to the actual debt issuance side of things.
For sure. That's correct. We do have 4 debts right now. The Vollmer Center debt will be fully paid off in 2028. So that will definitely help. There's also 2 parts to this ratio. There's the debt and then there's the net assets. So as we move forward and we continue to build up our reserve balances and whatnot, that also is taken into account in this ratio. So with that being said, every year with our capital plan, we are continually building up the amount that we put towards our reserves and whatnot. So that also helps with that ratio. So as you can see, every year we've been decreasing. 2014 was when we issued the debt for the town hall building here, which brought us into the moderate category. I think in 2019, I think is when we issued the last debt for some of the properties at the waterfront that we purchased. But that, we had enough room and enough built up in our reserves that didn't bring us back into the moderate category. So we'll see what happens next year. We're going to issue some at the beginning of 2022. There's a report going in the next couple of days to council, and then there's kind of 2 parts. That's the longer term, and then we're going to look as part of our waterfront plan to reissue debt every 5 years, just so that we can do significant projects every 5 years moving forward. So those are kind of the 2 sets of debt that we're looking at issuing. And then, with the DMAF grant and the pump station work that we're going to be doing along Front Road, we've already built up funding for that, but we will have to issue some debt for that as well. But that's already been built into the budget, which we'll explain over the next couple of days.
Thank you, Mr. Langwa. Any other council questions? I'm going to ask Mr. Langwa one. The amount of money we gave to the city for water and waste treatment, if we had that as an asset, that would help our debt to equity ratio, correct?
That's correct. We do have it. Well, we have the Lou Romano is recorded as a intangible capital asset. It's kind of a unique accounting situation. It's not actually a tangible capital asset, it's intangible, but it is an asset that we, I guess, partially own. We've contributed to build. But the water side, we don't own any of those assets. So that is not on our balance sheet.
Okay. And that comes from an award-winning budget team member again this year. Thank you. Okay, council's pleasure. Moved by Councillor Reno, support Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Summary of reports to council. Moved by Councillor Carrick. No question. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in item 5, the Howard Bouffard just managed master drainage study. Through you to the deputy CAO, Mr. Mara. Myself and fellow board member, Mr. Jarley there, we've chased this around. Is there any, I don't want to supersede the report coming in January if there's one coming in January, if it's pushed back to February, but have we heard anything on stage 2 yet? Just a quick update.
Mr.
Thank
Mara.
you. Thank you for your information. The report will be coming to council for the first meeting in January. It's just in the final stages of being drafted. I'm still trying to get that information from the Conservation Authority with respect to when stage or when the phase 2 work will commence. I have not heard anything. There's weekly reminder emails that are being sent out right now. I'm going to be getting to a point where there's going to be probably daily phone calls being made shortly so that we can get some answers, but certainly we will continue to chase this and we will provide council with an update when we present the report.
Okay, because our understanding was that myself and Councillor Desjardins, that they were moving forward with phase 2. We talked to one specific person in administration there. So, okay, keep on it, because if we have to bring it back again, we will, because we're meeting again in January. Thanks.
Councillor Reno.
Yeah, just a supplement to Councillor Carrick's question. I'm just wondering, again, I think we've all been very tied up in this wonderful spiral bound book for the last couple of weeks. And I see that we put capital aside specifically for like the Malden Road project, and there'll be some debt for the Front Road project. I didn't see any mention of the big dig in there. Do we have any thoughts on that? Like, I mean, are we still a year or two away from anything, even if we get a favorable report in January?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. There's a lot of complications that have to come into play with respect to the Howard Buford Master Drainage Study. There's a couple of aspects that have to be dealt with when we actually develop our final solution. First and foremost is we have to get through this Turkey Creek watershed study that's currently underway, or supposed to be currently underway, that we're still waiting to be finalized. When that report comes back, that will provide us some additional information for us to carry out our Howard Buford Master Drainage Study. Then we have to go through that study to develop the solution. Once we develop that solution, there's going to be some extensive discussions that have to occur between ourselves, the developers, and the other local municipalities of what effects does some of this external drainage have within the area, and how and who is paying for those various aspects. Certainly that may develop into something on the lines of a area-specific development charge or things of that nature. So certainly there's a lot of aspects that still need to be kind of worked through with respect to this. So, you know, again, it's a bit of a long-winded answer to the short question, but there is a process that we have to follow as we get through a lot of this information. First and foremost is trying to understand what is happening within the Turkey Creek watershed to better understand the effects of the Turkey Creek watershed has on this particular area of the external sources of water that are coming through this area.
Thank you.
Not an easy answer, Councillor Reno. A lot of moving parts. Well, actually, there's no moving parts. That's the problem. Council's pleasure. Moved by Councillor Reno, support Councillor Carrick. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. On all three readings, all 10 bylaws. Moved by Councillor Carrick, support by Councillor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Council questions. We'll go with Councillor Akpata and Councillor Carrick. I did that alphabetically. It was a tie.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is for Mr. Militia. Mr. Militia, with the changes that the health unit has made to COVID numbers, I received a number of calls. And what I mean is with the numbers of people you can have in your house and things of that nature. Can you explain to me, sir, so I can get back to the public, was the town of Lasalle consulted on any of those changes? And were you at the table when those decisions were made?
Thank you, Councillor Akpata. So the process in which the public health is governed is that we are, again, as municipalities, we are a partner agency, but we're again, they are the experts on public health, and they effectively go through that process of making whatever decisions that they believe are appropriate to protect the public at large. So from a consultative perspective, they do consult with local municipalities. I am part of a CAO task force that meets regularly with the health unit, and so those types of issues are discussed. However, when it comes down to the decision-making process, it is very again, it's not as if we have a vote at the table, or we have any type of perspective to add. We do add, you know, the impact it will have on municipalities. We add impact it has on our enforcement agencies, whether they be police or bylaw enforcement. And so we add those impacts in terms of how we can help the health unit with their letters of instructions or their Section 22 orders, or just their general information in terms of relaying that to the public. So again, we are not part of that decision-making circle, although we impact into kind of how those decisions are implemented and what we can do to help with those. I mean, it is an unfortunate situation we find ourselves in. Again, we're supportive of the health unit position administratively, and as the CAO group. Again, there's a lot of, again, much like the last issue we dealt with, there's a lot of moving parts, and there is a balance between the number of case counts, and from what we understand from the acting medical officer of health and the CEO of the health unit, it's really a balance that they're trying to take in terms of trying to keep the schools open while understanding what the case counts are doing, understanding what's happening with the hospitalization and what's happening with healthcare, and in particular with the ICU case counts. So those are kind of the 4 or 5 major aspects they use, at least that they're relating to us in terms of their decision-making process. And I can just relay to you that, again, I understand that the public at large may find some of these decisions difficult to deal with. And understandably so. We all want life to go back to normal, me, you, everyone included. And so I will say that the decisions that they make are not taken lightly, but their role in this process is to look at the public health in its entirety, and that means that they may not have as much consideration for the 12-person party you might want to have at your home. They're more interested in trying to stop the chain of transmission, and that's what they're trying to do to the best of their abilities, so that we don't overload the healthcare system. That's really been right from day one. That has been their mantra, is to try to stop the chain of transmission in whatever way possible. The vaccination, restrictions, and all those other elements, in order to make sure that hospital capacity is maintained, so that not only can the hospital deal with COVID related patients, but can also deal with non-COVID related patients. And that's really where we're at. I mean, there are some in our region, and I know, again, it's frustrating, but our region is no different than some of the 7 or 8 other regions that have instituted similar restrictions. So it is a difficult situation. There's no doubt about it. And I know that there was an item on the agenda with respect to businesses as well. We sympathize with businesses as they're going through, but they are trying their best to be measured with their responses. And I think there was a note that had we been in the former color-coded system, we would be in lockdown mode at this point. So the fact that we still have some amenities open, I hate to, throughout the pandemic, we've been getting really good at finding that silver lining, and there is a silver lining that the metrics are changing, and that where we were with the numbers a year ago, we're in a bit different place with maybe some consistent numbers, but there's a fair bit of worry, and understandably, and concern over where we are right now and where the mutations are arriving from. So again, it is a difficult position they find themselves in, but that is the role of public health. That is the role of the health unit, both locally as well as the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Ontario and Canada.
And just a supplemental, Your Worship. So
yes, go ahead.
If a resident asks me, it's exclusively the purview of the health unit then, sir?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I will say, from the political side, Joe saying from the bureaucratic side, we have a representative from the county, which is Warden Gary McNamara. He is the chair of the WICU, and I think Councillor from City of Windsor, I believe it's Mr. Councillor Bordelin, but I can't recall exactly. But at the end of the day, it's the medical officer of health who makes the call. It's not an easy decision, and we all received letters about supporting our businesses, and yes, they reduced number of patrons in restaurants. But as Mr. Militia said, if we were color coded, there'd be lockdown. So at least they're open and can do some business, other than the other side of the coin is we'd be locked down and not going there, and they wouldn't be open, other than possibly takeout again. So that's a little bit of good side to the story. But at the end of the day, we have to learn to live with this virus, and it's not getting better at this time. And sadly, you've seen in the paper some events in different areas where people attended and there was 45 people tested positive. And further to what Mr. Militia said, it's a strain on our hospital system, and people don't see it. And I know Councillor Carrick's involved in some health issues, not health issues, but health related people he deals with, and they're canceling surgeries. And I can tell you of a story that was told to me about this lady wanted to bring her father in for surgery that he required for cancer, and they canceled it. That was days ago, and he doesn't have many days left. So people think, oh, well, they have COVID, go to the hospital. Yes, but you're taking a bed away from somebody who needs it, and they're canceling surgeries. And that's of utmost importance, where people who maybe might be carefree should take another look at it. It could be one of their loved ones going in for emergency surgery or necessary surgery, and they don't receive it. Any other council questions? Councillor Carrick, yes.
Okay, so I guess we're all, and we've also said this many times, and just a quick little comment about that is buy local, keep it going. And my mom and them certainly appreciated that. It was a positive year in a very, very negative environment. So if we keep supporting, I think we'll get through this. Having said that, now I'm going back to MPAC if I can.
Yes.
I received my assessment and I'm thinking, oh my God, Merry Christmas to me and everybody else and who's got their tax review. I mean, it hasn't gone up. So that kind of makes me scared and nervous. So what I'm thinking is maybe we should start looking at a Windsor-Essex issue once we start dealing with MPAC and we all get together as a community, because once they lift the restrictions on this, the numbers might be astronomical. So, and we're going to have a heck of a lot of buying down to do or changing that mill rate to offset what's going to be coming. So what are we looking at? Have we heard anything? Are we dealing with that? Because it's very scary, to be honest with you. I don't mind paying a little bit each year, but I don't want to have to come back and mortgage my house just to pay my taxes.
Mr. Langwa.
Your worship, members of council, we've been asking the same question all year long. Recently, we have received an answer that the reassessment will not occur until at a minimum 2024. With that being said, all values of every property is based on January 1st, 2016 values, which is right before the boom started happening. The average value of a house, the median value in Lasalle is $255,000 based on that assessed value. Now, with that being said, I think, and I don't know yet, but I'm assuming that the province is probably coming up with a different strategy and how they're going to reassess properties. We do not have any knowledge of that yet. I'm hoping, every time I get the opportunity, I do ask that question. But with that being said, if they do reassess the values to in 2024 to what they're valued at, and they do go up by double or triple, the tax rate will be reduced to offset that to the levy that we do need. The challenge will be in proportion to other properties. If one property goes up much higher in proportion to another, there could be a big swing in the tax bill, and that's something that we can't control. And I'm sure that the provincial government's probably aware of that. And I'm sure that they're probably aware that the lower value properties are probably the ones that are going to swing higher than the higher valued properties, which creates a huge problem because speaking in general terms, the lower valued properties, lower income people live in those properties, and they're in proportion, value would go up and higher than proportion than, say, a house that was previously valued at $1 million. It's going to go up in a lower proportion, which would probably be a reduction in taxes. But that's why I wouldn't be surprised if there is a change in the entire reassessment process. But we will keep council and our residents up to date as we find out more information. But as of right now, it will be status quo for 2022, 2023, and 2024 budgets at a minimum.
Okay, so because I'm a long-term planner, I want to make sure that, we're not paying crazy money. So one follow-up to that then. So you're sending this stuff out. Are you meeting with the other treasurers from all the other municipalities too? Are you guys all doing this together so that we're sending one attack?
Yeah, we meet regularly to discuss, and we also speak with MPAC regularly. Okay. The reassessment, MPAC kind of goes out and does the reassessment, but the entire process and the strategy is determined at the provincial level. So often, every time I've asked, they haven't had an answer for me.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any other council questions? Statements by council members? Mr. Militia. He's not a council member, but we'll
I'm
let
not
him
a
speak.
council member, but I did, again, for the viewing audience, Councillor Richo Spaniolo has been having technical difficulties all throughout the meeting. And so for those that are viewing, if you've seen Councillor Richo Spaniolo's video come on and off and notice that she has been inputting, it is just because she's gone through some technical issues that we're trying to resolve and hope to resolve in the next day or two. So again, for those, the viewing audience, I just wanted to make them aware of that.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. The only statement I want to make is for those of our viewing audience that are not going to be joining us for the next few days for budgets. I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Well, I was going to save that for later, but since you started, Councillor Reno, we'll go around the table. According to my screen, Councillor Akpata.
Thank you, Your Worship. We are privileged to live in the town of LaSalle, and we're privileged to have what we have, which is a safe, peaceful community where people try to do the best that they possibly can. On behalf of myself and my family, whatever your religious views are, enjoy the holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and from my family to yours, please stay safe, participate in the budget ceremonies that we do tomorrow, see how we manage the money for our town, and see what we can do to assist you. On behalf of myself, thank you very much. Stay safe and have a great holiday.
Councillor Carrick.
Okay, so that's why Councillor Reynolds jumped the gun so he didn't have to follow Mike. Mr. Akpata. Last year he had to follow him, and I remember him making them comments. Anyways, Merry Christmas to everyone, my family, my friends, my workplace, my colleagues, our administration, everybody. That be thankful for what we have, and we're all dealing. And it's been very tough times. Very excited to look for the holidays and spend some great quality time with the family. So again, Merry Christmas to everybody, and Happy New Year and all that good stuff that goes with it.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. Well, this has been certainly a very challenging year for all of us. What are we, 20 months into this thing at this point? And I want to say thank you to our team LaSalle, our residents of LaSalle. We've survived. We're moving forward. Slowly, we're getting there, I hope. And I hope that over the Christmas season that everyone has a Merry Christmas, a happy holiday. You get to relax a little, laugh a little, and we'll look forward to January, and hopefully we'll have better numbers and we'll be able to do more things outside of our homes. So happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Councillor Desjardins. I have a text from Councillor Richo Spaniolo. I'll read it. Wishing all the residents of LaSalle a wonderful holiday season from my family to yours, from Anita Richo Spaniolo. Thank you, Anita. Technical difficulties really messes things up in a meeting, especially a long one like we have this evening. From the mayor, I want to thank Team LaSalle. That's my other family. I spend many hours here with Team Joe and Jennifer and Linda and the whole team here discussing, planning. These are all the behind the scenes that people that live in our municipality don't see it. They don't know the countless hours that we spend. I say we as council. It's they see the things on social media. Either they like it or don't like it, and we get comments, good, bad, and indifferent. But I will say that I'm proud of this council. They're doing decisions that are based on what's best for the community. It might not affect you in a positive manner or a negative manner, but we're doing what's good for the 33,000 population, not just what is in front of your yard. Maybe a sidewalk issue, maybe a fence issue. But at the end of the day, we try our best. And some of these decisions are not easily made. And I know council all have their own opinion. No, we don't meet before and make decisions. And you could see from one of the votes tonight where I was in support, council voted against. It doesn't matter. It's a team decision and we live by it, and I'll support that decision. But I want to wish from my family here at town council and my family at home, thank you. It's not an easy job. We enjoy it. We want to wish you a Merry Christmas. It's time to spend with your home family, not your work family. So thank you, everyone. Have a great, blessed Christmas. And now we'll go to notices of motion. Or wait a minute, let me offer Mr. Militia from Team Lasalle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I would just echo the comments that have been raised again from Team LaSalle here, all the administrative staff from all the various departments. Please, everyone, have a happy holiday season. Enjoy whatever your religious belief might be. Please enjoy it. Mine happens to be Merry Christmas, but we just want everyone to enjoy the holiday season. Please do it safely. Please, take in some of the things that we have to offer. Again, if you haven't been out to our holiday heritage lights, you must be living under a rock, but please get out of that rock and come on down and see what we have to offer here at Normandy and Malden. It is a wonderful display put on, and I can't thank those involved from the planning staff to the finance folks that would help with the funding, to the actual folks in Parks and Public Works that have put that display together, to the public and the programming staff and Culture and Rec. I can't forget about them, to the folks that have really made this a very special place to be during this holiday season. So take the time, spend time with your family. Again, COVID's taught us one thing, that time is limited. And so it's important that we spend time with our loved ones and maybe decompress a little bit and get ready for the new year as it comes forward. But thank you for the residents for their understanding throughout this year. We know it has been easy. We know that we've put a lot of restrictions coming on and off, and it's been a bit of the juggling act that we've all had. But thank you for all the patience that the residents have afforded us. And please, again, stay safe during this holiday season.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. Notices of motion. Seeing none. Confirmatory bylaw, first reading. Councillor Reno, Councillor Desjardins, all in favor? That carries. Second reading, Councillor Carrick, Councillor Akpata, all in favor, that carries. Third and final reading, Councillor Carrick and Councillor Reno, all in favor, that carries. Thank you. We have our schedule of meetings. We'll be busy tomorrow with budgets, award-winning budget. I will say again, 7 years in a row. I think it's 7 years in a row. So we have a great team down back there. So if somebody wants to watch on YouTube, it'll be available tomorrow and Thursday. Everyone, thank you for watching from your comforts of your home. Council, good night. Have a safe night.